Grandpa Keto here. After 2 years, over 2 years on Wegovy, I want to share with you 3 of the biggest lessons that I have learned. These are things that I don't see a lot of people talking about, things that I don't see a lot of people exposing, really, in a sense. But today I'm going to share them with you. Number 3 is going to be one that doesn't even really surprise you, to be honest. So let's get right into it. You go into it, don't you, thinking that once you get on Wegovy, it's the magic shot, and it's going to take you where you need to go. You know, if you've been overweight for long, and you're like me and been overweight all your life, you're excited because when you first start taking a shot, you see results. And you think those results are going to continue over the course until you get down to your goal weight. And you know that's not really the case. I know that I got my shot through weight management at a hospital. I go to weight management, and they told me when I first started taking it kind of hit on the fact that you would lose 15% of your body weight. That was about the average, which it is. When we look at Wegovy now, and I just checked the stats on it before I come on to shoot this video, Wegovy is showing a 15% reduction in body weight over, over 68 weeks, which is 15 and a half months. You get a 15% reduction in body weight. You're going to understand this in a minute. I'm going to explain why that happens in tip number 2, so hang on with me here. But I lost 25% of my body weight overall, and they called me a super responder. I dropped from about 265 pounds down to 200 pounds. And to be honest with you, I did that in the first 7 months, and I began to maintain after 7 months. I really lost no weight after 7, 8, well, let's just say 7 or 8 months. I really lost no weight from that point on. I just kind of stayed steady after that. So that's something to take into account, that, you know, Wegovy's a tool. And I want you to remember that, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit. Number 2, and this is something that no one really talks a lot about, is that the effectiveness of the shot begins to wane with time. So when you first start taking a shot, I think we all go through the same thing. At least all the people I've talked to, it's been on a GLP-1, whether it's Wegovy, Ozempic, Zepbound, or whatever, Mounjaro. Everyone kind of gets through the same thing. Your system slows down, and all of a sudden you're always full, and you're not ever really hungry. I can remember there were times when I first started taking the shot that I'd miss meals. I didn't eat. I'd go to bed at night going, oh, I forgot to eat dinner tonight. I just wasn't hungry. I was full. I felt full. So you forget to eat. You know, those food noises are gone. And, you know, that's something popular that we hear today. And I think really a lot of that came from the drug manufacturers. Of course, they're wanting to sell a shot that costs over $1,000 a month. So you can understand why they do this. But they talk about the food noise. And I agree with the fact that there is food noise. If you're overweight and you've been overweight, you understand that you think a lot about food. At least I always did. I can't go to town. I couldn't go to town. And without thinking, oh, I got to stop at such and such. And I'd stop at a fast food place and grab a burger or some fries or a milkshake or a Frosty or some tacos or whatever. But if I went to town, I started thinking about where I was going to eat. I'd seen times, and I'm sure there are more of you out there like me who, you know, got up and ate breakfast and then started thinking about what they was going to have for lunch or dinner. And so that food noise goes away and you're not thinking about food. To me, that was the biggest plus to being on Wegovy, is the fact that the food noise was gone. And then, of course, you can't overeat without getting sick. If you eat too much, you're going to get sick when you're taking the shot, especially at first. But what happens is with time, I found it to be, at least with me, after about a year, those benefits started to wane a little bit. My system was a little faster. It wasn't as slow as it was. I no longer forgot to eat because I would still develop hunger at the right times, I'll have to say. And the food noise was still gone, mostly. But sometimes after a year, I'd still go to town and I'd be like, yeah, I ought to stop and get a burger. Or I'd have a craving for something. And these were things I didn't have before. And then, of course, overeating. You come to a point where it used to get really sick if you overate. And I found that after about a year, even on days if I overate, I didn't get nearly as sick. I'd be uncomfortable. I'd be a little bloated. But I didn't get sick like I would have in that first, 6-8 months. So that changes. So you're looking at the fact that it seems like, at least in my experience, that the shot's effectiveness began to wane after about the first, we'll say 6-7 months. Now, by the time I got into the second year, and as time went past and I hit a year and a half or so, I still had a little reduction in the food noise, so I wasn't fighting the food noise. But the other things, my system was a little slower than normal. But everything was starting, as far as my system's going, started to kind of move back to normal. So this was after about a year and a half. I'd taken a shot for about 2 years, well, a little over 2 years, and I'm just now beginning to wean off of it. And here comes the third thing, and this is probably the biggest lesson that I learned, and it's a lesson that we have been trying to learn for our whole lives, I think, if you're like me. And that is GLP-1s are a tool. I can remember talking to people who had gastric bypass surgery, and they were always being told, listen, this is a tool. And at the same time that they're going through the bypass surgery, they're also seeing dietitians and psychologists and so on, learning how to eat, what to eat, proper diet, so on. And, that's something that, we look at this shot as being this miracle drug that takes away all of this, basically kind of takes away our responsibility of what we eat or when we eat or, anything like that. And now all of a sudden we find out after a year, my biggest regret is that I didn't settle in to a dietary pattern in those first 2 years. Let me explain that. I focused heavily on protein during those first 6-7 months. I made sure that every day I was getting in about 150 to 170 grams of protein. And I know what you're thinking, how did you do that? Well, a lot of times it came with I drink 2 protein drinks a day. Fairlife, 30 grams of protein a bottle. So I drank 2 of those a day. I would eat protein pancakes. Once again, processed food, because I bought the Premier protein pancakes in the frozen section. I would eat my scrambled eggs, believe it or not, scrambled with cottage cheese in them. And sometimes I just ate cottage cheese on the side, but I worked to get in at 100 and some grams of protein every day. That's what I concentrated on. Then after I lost the weight, my diet began to slip and I didn't concentrate as much on the protein, and I never got into a steady pattern. If you saw my first video, I talked about the fact, and really this is what I did. I used a modified ketogenic diet, a keto diet, while I was on the GLP-1, and I did that. I found out the hard way, and I'll explain that in a later video, but I was able to settle into a keto diet, which really helped me. But then I slipped from that going into year 2, because then I was able to eat practically anything again where I wasn't able to eat before. So getting into that first year gives you an opportunity, and this is a big opportunity for you to change your diet. It is a time to learn to eat right, to eat the right things. For me, Grandpa Keto, I'm going to recommend that you do a ketogenic diet. And I'm going to be talking about going from a GLP-1 to a ketogenic diet. That is what I am doing now. I have transitioned from Wegovy, and now I am doing a ketogenic diet. And I'm getting many of the same results right now. So anyway, remember that the GLP-1 is just a tool, and that you're going to have to correct your eating if you expect to get the weight off and keep it off long term. And then if you run into an instance where you lose insurance company or lose insurance coverage, or something comes up that you're going to go off of the GLP-1, you'll be prepared to do just that, or even at a lower dose maybe. So those are 3 things to think about today, and I hope you'll learn from my experiences, because if I could go back and do it over again, I would go back and look at it differently, and I would approach it differently, and I might have been off of this, I might have been off of Wegovy a year ago. So anyway, if you get a chance there, please subscribe and maybe like and share. Get down in the comments, and if you're having some sort of experience, if you're on Wegovy, or if you have questions, or if you're on a GLP-1, just reach out and let me know. I'm more than willing to answer questions, and we'd like to hear about your experience so we can all share this journey together. Thank you for tuning in. See you next time.